Nobody was asking for spaceships in Magic, but we got them. They're legal in Commander and legal to be your commander. So will you be seeing a sky of ion blasters scorching your bunnies and gobos? I don't think so, but you will be seeing Hearthfall the World Seed leading the World Shaper precon. This is a Jund, or black, red, and green commander deck that intends to sacrifice lands to grow back stronger. Now, building a game plan around sacrificing a valuable resource like land is a bold and exciting direction for a precon, and it all starts by understanding the commander, and even more fundamentally, Spacecraft. Spacecraft enter as artifacts and accrue charge counters by tapping your creatures at sorcery speed to gain more abilities and ultimately become a standalone creature. The kids are calling it stationing. Take note of the power of the creatures you tap, because that will be the number of counters gained. The World Seed, gloriously orbiting over Evendo, basking in the beautiful purple landscape, needs 2 charge counters to gain its first ability. For 1 mana, you can tap it to sacrifice a land, draw 2 cards, and play an additional land this turn. That's impressive. So impressive that any creature in the precon with less than 2 power needs a very critical review, but we'll get to that. 8 charge counters turns the Spacecraft into a flying, vigilant, and hasted 6/7 creature with a passive ability that will drain each opponent to life whenever you sacrifice a land. That's a thick body. It's a win condition and a fantastic introduction of Spacecraft into Commander. But of course, the new cards don't stop there. There are 12 total new cards, including the 2 commanders, and I'm gonna talk about my favorites. Horizon Explorer leads the pack. This 2 and a green 2/4 Insect Scout lets lands you control enter untapped. For the most part in Commander, the power in that is the automatic improvement of a budget mana base and letting your rampant growth effects tutor those lands to be untapped. And speaking of, this effect works incredibly well with the Lander tokens the creature makes whenever you attack a player. Lander tokens being a new artifact that can be tapped and sacrificed, or 2 generic mana to put a basic land from your library onto the battlefield tapped, or with the Explorer, untapped. Now it's unknown, but canon in my brain, that the Horizon Explorer frequents the Exploration Broodship. This is a 1 green mana spacecraft with abilities at Station 3 and Station 8. With 3 charge counters, it gains an ability that lets you play an additional land on each of your turns. That's already good enough to consider in any green deck, though markedly better if your commander has at least 3 power. I love it in Maria, Scholar of Antiquity, for instance. In any case, at 8 charge counters, it turns into a flying 4/4 creature that, once per turn, lets you cast a permanent spell from your graveyard by sacrificing a land in addition to paying its other costs. Like any spacecraft, you need to put in a little work, but at 1 mana, the upside is crazy here. Baloth Prime is the last one I want to talk about, and also has crazy upside, but only in this kind of deck. Prime is a 3 and a green 10/10 that enters with 6 stun counters on it, meaning that anytime it would become untapped, it instead removes a stun counter. The good news is that whenever you sacrifice a land, you create a 4/4 green beast creature token, classic Baloth, and untap this creature. Even more, you can pay 4 mana to sacrifice a land and gain 2 life. It enables and rewards the strategy of the deck. Will be online sooner than your opponents expect, and it looks awesome. The first 2 new cards I spoke about total around $9, and in a Commander precon that is sitting around $40 to $45, that's not so bad. But let's take a look at the reprints to see if the deck is worth that $40 to $45. The best reprint is Kobold Accursed King. This dragon is a powerhouse, with this printing costing $2 and the cheapest other print costing just under $8. For the record, all the other prices in this section will reflect the cheapest other print cost. Anyway, the card advantage alone on this creature is absurd, let alone the inevitable prospect of a massive game-ending aerial threat. The other 3 high-value creature reprints are Morog, Fury of Akum, Mazarek, Crawl Death Priest, and Oracle of Maldaya. Morog is a furious extra combat step win condition with the landfall trigger. Mazarek is best when you have wide boards, because the counters from any player sacrificing a permanent goes wild. And the Oracle offers additional lands and card advantage by letting you play them off the top of your library. At $7, $5, and $7, the reprint total is up to $27. Make that $33 with the final card I want to mention, Fabled Passage. The land fixes for all your colors by way of a basic, and if you have 4 or more lands, it enters untapped. With these 5 reprints and the 2 new cards totaling $42, the value is certainly there at the $40 to $45 price point. I would even expand that to the $50 that you might see at a local game store. But value only goes so far if you can't cast your spells. So let's take a look at the mana base, which is doubly important in a land-based deck like World Shaper. Off the top, there are a lot of lands, 42, which makes sense given they're the central strategy. And what I like to see is that 10 of those lands can sacrifice themselves. Fabled Passage is the best one, but lands like Escape Tunnel, Riveteer's Overlook, and Mountain Valley are there and get the job done. I'll get to budget upgrades later on in the video, but it's worth mentioning here that the premium fetch lands, like Bloodstained Mire and Wooded Foothills, will add enormous value to the deck. In terms of color distribution, you may notice that these percentages look low. Moxfield doesn't account for the fetch lands, so a 17-10-17 breakdown for black, red, and green is actually 25-20-25. These are good and higher numbers than normal, which tracks given the land count. But normally with 3 colors in the 20s, you'll see more tap lands, and the trend holds steady with 14 tapped lands in the precon. Your early game curve is going to feel interrupted, I won't sugarcoat it. With that said, the value add of the fetch lands that enter tapped, once you've got your pieces in place, will at least let you catch up to the rest of the table. Other than that, there are 4 conditional tap lands, 7 untapped lands, and 17 basic lands, including a waste. So with the understanding that the mid to late game is where you'll start to outvalue and outgrind your opponents, it's time to get to the additions. 10 budget additions, totaling just under $10. And let's start with Rumbleweed. It's a big swing, no doubt, so let me explain. Your end game is generally going to look one of 2 ways, and one of those ways is with some creatures on the battlefield and a graveyard full of lands. The cost reduction for each land in your graveyard will substantially reduce the casting cost, and then the +3/+3 and trample for the other creatures you control adds a lot of stats and the all-important ability to damage face. The other scenario is grinding with Hearthhall and a bunch of land on the battlefield. The 8 power of Rumbleweed immediately stations the Spacecraft to its 6/7 creature form and unlocks the life-draining ability, an ability that can be capitalized on with Nahiri's Lithoforming. This X and 2 red sorcery lets you sacrifice X lands to then draw that many cards. You even get the ability to play X additional lands this turn, though they all enter tap. I like that you can rebuild your mana base, but the real goal is to have Hearthhall online and lay it all on the line by sacrificing your lands to deal lethal damage to the table. Rumbleweed and Nahiri's Lithoforming are 29 cents and 57 cents respectively. Durin Orb is the next addition to stay on the mass land sacrifice theme. This is a 0 mana artifact that lets you freely sacrifice your lands for a healthy gain of 2 life. There may be times when that life gain matters, but truly this is a button for you to press whenever you need to sacrifice a land, whether it's to win the game or spring a surprise beast blocker thanks to Baloth Prime. Durin Orb is $2.02. Itering Precursor is a game-long value creature that rewards you with mana as you do the thing. For 2 and a red, you get a 3/3 with Menace that will create a 0/1 Eldrazi spawn creature token whenever you sacrifice a non-token permanent. Those Eldrazi can self-sacrifice to add 1 colorless mana. This can give you some breathing room to make risky plays or set you up for big mana plays in subsequent turns. Those tokens synergizing with the likes likes of Mayhem Devil, and Jury Master of the Review is the cherry on top. Skittering Precursor is 6 cents. Malevolent Rumble is the other edition, with the handy Eldrazi spawn tokens. This 1 and a green sorcery reveals the top 4 cards of your library and lets you put a permanent card from among them into your hand. The rest go into your graveyard and you make a spawn token. The flexibility of any permanent being on the table to return to hand, as well as the mana refund, makes this spell awesome at any stage of the game. Malevolent Rumble is 49 cents. The 5 black and red Balrog, Durin's Bane, is a favorite of mine, and the permanent sacrifice to cost reduction makes this fit right in. After all, it is a lesson that dwarves learned about shaping your world too much. The 7/5 Balrog has haste and can only be blocked by legendary creatures. The mileage of that ability will vary, but has been known to cause problems. The final ability is a death trigger that lets the Balrog take down a target artifact or creature an opponent controls when the Balrog goes down. This isn't a bracket 4 kind of edition, to be clear, but I'm not a bracket 4 kind of guy. Durin's Bane is 37 cents. Roar of Resistance is your 1 and a red win condition. A bunch of creatures make big tokens when a land enters or is sacrificed. Titania, both of these Baloths, and Omnath. And most of the time, that action is going to have to be on your turn, through the casting of Splendid Reclamation or God Eternal Bantu. Roar of Resistance being on the battlefield will let you convert your massive army to a win straight away, and the second ability adds that special extra sauce. It's worth noting here that the attacking creatures don't have to be yours, so feel encouraged to use this politically to your advantage. Roar of Resistance is 70 cents. Ramunap Excavator is next. In a deck where you're putting lands in the graveyard, one of the best things you can do is play lands from the graveyard, and this creature lets you do that. There's nothing more to it, and there doesn't have to be. The 3/2, 2 and a green Ramunap Excavator is $2.90. Canuck Memorial Ensign is part of the army assaulting Hearthhall, but let's leave that aside because he is the final non-land addition. For 1, a red and a green, this creature will deal 1 damage to each opponent on every landfall trigger. What levels him up is the second landfall trigger will let you draw a card. With Hearthhall enabling double land drops with the Station 2 ability, coincidentally the power of Tanuk, this creature should provide plenty of card advantage. It's everything you want, and you can find Tanuk for only 30 cents. The final edition is Caveron, Memorial World, which is where Tanuk and the Kavu are attacking Avendu and the Umidians from. Flavorfail aside, this land is the new planet type that enters tapped and can be stationed. It taps for a red, and when it's stationed at 12, it can be tapped and activated for 1 and a red to sacrifice a land, create a 2/2 robot, give your creatures +1 power, and give your creatures haste. The upside of this land is enormously high enough to make up for it being a single color tap land, which I try to avoid in 3 color decks. Caveron Memorial World is $1.22. As a bonus, Twisted Landscape and Demolition Field are 2 more lands to consider. Each taps for a colorless mana and can sacrifice themselves. The Landscape can find a basic in any of the 3 Jund colors, while the field takes 2 mana to destroy a non-basic land an opponent controls. But returning to the main additions, you can see all 10 on screen now. But as you know, when 10 enter, 10 must leave, and let's start with the 0 or 1 power creatures I spoke about before. Groundskeeper, Satyr Wayfinder, and Scouring Swarm are out. There are more that you can consider, but these are the weakest in my estimation. Groundskeeper is too slow and doesn't exactly fit the game plan. Satyr Wayfinder is a worse Malevolent Rumble, and I really wanted to like Scouring Swarm, but the hoops you gotta jump through are too high for me. Urg, Spawn of Turg, has 0 or 1 power sometimes. Other times it can have a lot, but the lack of evasion limits that combat upside. Also, this is best early to get those surveils rolling, and having exactly black-green in the early game won't be trivial. The new creature, Eumidian Wastewaker, is getting cut because it looks like it should have flying, but it doesn't. The Windgrace package is being deleted. I'm not convinced you'll have the lands in hand to make Soul of Windgrace truly get there, and I'm a certified hater of Windgrace's judgment. How about you judge these nuts? Formless Genesis and Planetary Annihilation are the other sorceries being cut. Formless Genesis for the same reason as the Soul of Windgrace, as well as creature types not impacting the deck. Planetary Annihilation's land destruction I can get behind, but only 6 damage to creatures makes me very worried about casting this against a Stompy deck. Lastly, I'm removing the only standalone enchantment, Binding the Old Gods. It's partially to remove the enchantment category entirely, and partially because the card is kinda mid in this deck. I want you to take a look in the description where you can find the deck list of World Shaper with these 10 additions and cuts clearly laid out. While you're down there, I also want you to smash that subscribe button. Really hard. Like the video if you liked the video, and let me know what cards you are slotting in to the World Shaper precon.